What's going on YouTube? Listen up, young elder gang. This is Jabari Stanford at you with another banger. Please make sure you like, subscribe, and share this video, fam. I hope this video get at least 100,000 likes in this video. You will find history definitions, scripture information, and best of all, what we Americans have been deprived of from the beginning. The truth, keep in mind, this content used in this video is intended for entertainment, educational, and informational purposes only. We will give you the total truth as we best understand it today. Be sure to hit that like button. Young Elder Gang, hit that subscribe button. If you're new to the channel, hit that bell. And don't forget to check back with us every day for new content. In the twilight of an age, the world was held in the iron grip of an unseen empire, built not of stone, but of numbers and debt. Elite bankers, cloaked in secrecy, moved markets with a whisper, their power absolute. The masses below, unaware, lived under invisible chains, fueling a system that offered them no real reward. This was their dark masterpiece. Even in the deepest darkness, a flicker of light persists. Whispers began in shadowy corners as people questioned the world they'd always known. A new awareness dawned, promising to dissolve old hierarchies and empower the individual. The whispers grew louder, uniting strangers across the globe, setting the stage for a confrontation of epic proportions. As the old world groaned under its chains, a cosmic tide began to turn. The age of Pisces faded, and the age of Aquarius arrived, bringing winds of revolution and intellect. Information flowed freely, breaking old barriers. The internet became the vessel for a new consciousness, decentralizing power and awakening the human spirit. The foundations of the old order began to crumble under the relentless light of the Aquarian dawn. The Aquarian age arrived as a torrent of digital information, amplifying whispers into a global conversation. Social media became the new public square, where the elite's narratives unraveled and truth spread rapidly. The people awakened, connected by technology, forming a powerful, united network for change. As knowledge spread, old divisions faded. People united against a common oppressor, and the elite's power began to crumble. A new unity took root, decentralized, organic, and unstoppable. The seeds of unity grew, preparing to challenge the empire of shadows. Faced with the rising tide of the Great Awakening, the elite bankers retreated to their oldest and most formidable weapon, the control of knowledge. They understood that their dark empire could only persist as long as the masses remained unenlightened. A populace unable to think critically was a populace unable to rebel. Thus, they reinforced the walls of their fortress of ignorance. They doubled down on their strategy of limiting education, ensuring that schools taught obedience, not inquiry. Curriculums were carefully curated to produce compliant workers, not sovereign thinkers. History was sanitized, economics was mystified, and the very concept of questioning authority was discouraged from a young age. The bankers' goal was to create a society dependent on their expertise. They promoted a culture where complexity was seen as the domain of the elite. The financial system, they argued, was just too intricate for the common person to comprehend. This narrative was a deliberate act of intellectual disenfranchisement. By making their world seem impossibly complex, they fostered a sense of helplessness among the people. Citizens were led to believe they needed the bankers to manage their world, just as a patient needs a surgeon. It was a masterful deception, turning their greatest weakness, their parasitic nature, into a perceived strength. The fortress was built from the minds of the people themselves. They also waged a war on information in the digital realm. An army of propagandists was unleashed to flood the channels of communication with noise and confusion. For every truth that surfaced, a dozen falsehoods were created to discredit it. They manufactured fake scandals, promoted distracting entertainment, and used sophisticated algorithms to bury inconvenient facts. This strategy was not about winning an argument. It was about creating a state of information overload. In this chaotic environment, the average person would struggle to distinguish truth from fiction. Exhausted and confused, many would simply disengage, retreating from the fight and leaving the field to the bankers. The fortress of ignorance was also psychological. The bankers' owned media outlets continuously pushed a message of fear and scarcity. They told the people that the world was a dangerous place, that resources were dwindling, and that only their firm hand could prevent society from descending into chaos. This constant barrage of negativity was designed to keep the population in a low vibrational state of anxiety. A fearful person is easy to control. They are less likely to take risks, less likely to challenge the status quo, and more likely to cling to the illusion of security offered by their oppressors. The bankers were not just controlling what people knew, they were controlling how people felt. While the fortress of ignorance kept minds clouded, the bankers deployed another insidious strategy, the poison of division. They knew that a united humanity was the one force they could not defeat. Therefore, they invested billions in amplifying and creating discord. Their media empires became factories of outrage, expertly identifying the fault lines in society and prying them open. They turned neighbor against neighbor, fueling ancient hatreds and inventing new ones. Race, religion, nationality, and political affiliation were all weaponized. Every story was framed as a conflict, every debate a battle to the death. The goal was to keep the people fighting amongst themselves, too distracted to notice their common enemy. They perfected the art of social engineering using data harvested from the digital lives of billions. They understood the psychological triggers that could provoke anger, jealousy, and suspicion. These triggers were then used to craft targeted propaganda campaigns delivered directly to the screens of unsuspecting individuals. One group was told that another was a threat to their livelihood. Another group was convinced that their traditions were under attack. Each message was a carefully calibrated dose of poison, designed to erode empathy and destroy the potential for solidarity. The bankers watched from their towers as the fabric of society began to tear apart, a process they had initiated and meticulously managed. This strategy of division was deeply cynical, but devastatingly effective. It created a world of echo chambers, where people only heard voices that confirmed their own biases and fears. Meaningful dialogue became impossible. The very idea of a shared reality began to dissolve. In this fractured landscape, the bankers presented themselves as the only stable force, the reluctant arbiters of a world gone mad. They offered their brand of order as the only alternative to the chaos they themselves had engineered. It was a protection racket on a global scale, where they created the fire and then sold the extinguisher at an exorbitant price. The poison ran so deep that it began to infect the awakening movement itself. The bankers' agents infiltrated online groups in real-world gatherings, posing as allies while sowing seeds of distrust. They instigated purity tests and internal power struggles, turning activists against one another. They exploited ideological differences, magnifying minor disagreements into major schisms. The burgeoning unity that had so terrified the elite was now under constant assault from within. The bankers knew that if they could turn the revolution on itself, they could crush it without firing a single shot. The greatest battle was not on the streets, but in the hearts and minds of those who sought freedom. The elite bankers' most sinister strategy was erasing true identity. They severed people from their roots, promoting a bland global culture and reducing identity to brands or labels. The Moors, native to the Americas, had their heritage buried under false history and legal fictions. Only by reclaiming their true identity could people break free and reclaim their power. In their fortress of greed, bankers tried to control the masses with fear and misinformation. But a new science emerged, mass awareness, spreading through genuine connection, not coercion. Each person became a node in a living network, awakening to their own power and truth. At the heart of this new science was a simple, profound principle. Each one, teach one. Born from the darkness of slavery, this idea became a ripple of knowledge in the digital age. Knowledge, shared from person to person, created waves that reached distant shores, empowering individuals and building a community of enlightenment. As the principle of each one teach one spread, the bankers began to fear the so-called 100th monkey effect, a sudden viral leap in collective awareness. Once fringe ideas burst into the mainstream, hashtags exploded, and legal concepts like the straw man theory became common knowledge. The critical mass was building, and the elite scrambled to predict the tipping point. But their logic failed against a phenomenon that was psychological and spiritual. The belief in a coming shift gave the movement hope and unity, fueling their resolve. The bankers' desperate attempts at censorship and division only exposed their fear. The myth of the 100th monkey became a self-fulfilling prophecy. The people's belief in sudden change was creating the very conditions for it. As intentions aligned, the world stood on the edge of a collective awakening. As the awakening neared, the elite fell into a mass hysteria, haunted by the pressure of millions awakening to the truth. Paranoia and irrational behavior spread among bankers. Their composure cracked, revealing the frightened men behind the curtain. Rumors of collapse and exposure raced through their ranks, amplifying their terror. The unity they once destroyed among the people now emerged among themselves, but as shared panic. The public saw this fear as an admission of guilt, the final death rattle of the old world. The tremors of hysteria signaled the collapse of the bankers' illusion of control. The earthquake was coming, and the people watched with solemn understanding. As the bankers' empire trembled, a buried truth surfaced. The label black was a legal fiction, a status of civil death. The people realized their identity had been weaponized to ensure perpetual servitude. Rejecting the slave names, they declared, "I am not black, I am a Moor." This was more than semantics. It was a reclamation of heritage and sovereignty. The Moors recognized themselves as the aboriginal people of the Americas, heirs to a rich civilization. By casting off the slave name, they withdrew consent to be governed and owned. The bankers' system, built on this legal fiction, began to crumble. The foundation of their wealth was turning to dust. Rediscovering their Moorish identity, the people reclaimed sovereignty that predated the United States itself. They invoked ancient treaties, like the 1787 Treaty of Peace and Friendship, to assert their rights. The Moors rejected fraudulent contracts, mortgages, and taxes, refusing to play by the bankers' rules. Understanding the straw man theory, they separated from the legal fiction and reclaimed their living status. The system, designed for compliant subjects, faltered against millions asserting sovereignty. Banks and courts faced challenges they could not answer. The machine ground to a halt. The Moors reclaimed not just personal freedom, but their ancestral homeland. The true owners of the land were standing up, and the game was over. The bankers' ultimate terror was a historical reckoning. The Moorish awakening threatened to expose their fabricated narrative. The truth revealed the bankers' ancestors as usurpers who destroyed a global civilization. A united Moorish people would not seek inclusion, but build new systems of abundance and cooperation. The bankers' lineage, built on deception and theft, faced exposure and obsolescence. Attempts to suppress the movement failed. The truth resonated too deeply. The fear of a lost kingdom was the fear of losing stolen thrones. The true kings and queens had returned, and the ghosts of the old world were about to be exorcised. The awakening reached its zenith. The Great Refusal began, not with violence, but with a quiet, unstoppable act of collective disobedience. Millions simply stopped participating, pulling their energy from the bankers' machine. The system slowed, starved of belief. Debts were declared void. The bankers' power faded. The Great Refusal was the quietest, most devastating revolution in history. The Great Refusal triggered a catastrophic liquidity crisis for elite bankers. Their power, built on money's constant flow, suffocated as panic swept the markets. The towers of glass and steel became tombs, their empire hollowed out, crumbling from within. Their foundations, eroded by greed and corruption, finally collapsed. The day of reckoning arrived. The elite bankers, once hidden in shadows, were brought before the people. Stripped of power, they knelt before the unified masses, acknowledging a new era. The puppeteers were now at the mercy of those they once controlled. The age of ego ended. Unity began. The world reborn was not chaos, but restoration. With the elite gone, human cooperation flourished. Shadows of fear faded, replaced by unity and shared purpose. Knowledge became a way of life, justice turned restorative, and abundance replaced scarcity. Humanity, finally free, looked to the stars, ready for infinite discovery. The Great Awakening is not a moment in history, but an ever-present dawn, one each generation must choose to witness. The new world is a garden, tended daily by all. True power is within the people, not granted or seized. The work of awakening is never finished. The dawn is ever present for those with the courage to open their eyes.